Before we get into today's interview, I wanted to touch on something real quick. There's a lot of polls up on certain social media sites asking what people's favorite chews are. Now, while I don't have a favorite, I will say this company Grub Terra sent me some to check out, and they're actually really good. The dogs love them, and there's a bit of an assortment. As you can see, the bag's already open. They're already half gone. They're basically single ingredient treats for your dogs. Single source of protein, promotes overall health, great for high value rewards like at the end of a training session. You know, they've been getting those little bits the whole time as you're training them. Now when the training is over, you give them something nice they could chew on for a little bit before they actually kill it. It's a freeze-dried treat, and like I said, a single ingredient treat. My dogs love them, and I would definitely recommend it. I'm not getting paid to say this or anything. They just sent me the product, check it out, see what my opinion is, and I really like it. So it's called Bully Bites, and it's for medium to large dogs, and the company name is Grub Terra. I'll definitely leave a link in the description so you guys could check them out. Appreciate you guys. God bless you all, and let's get into the interview. So what's new, man? What's the update on your yard?
Same thing. I've kind of cut down a little bit. I think I've got 11 dogs, which is pretty low for me. I think in my height, I probably had 26 dogs, 28 dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting too old for all this. It's too much work, but I just can't stop.
Yeah, no, you're not getting old. You're getting better.
Yeah. I just need a staff of people to take care of my dogs and socialize them and do all the work I have to do every day. That'd be awesome. And I could just play with puppies and go hog hunting or whatever.
Right. You still hog hunting?
I've never been a real hog hunter. I've sold a lot of dogs and given dogs to hog hunters. I've been on a couple of hog hunts, but I wouldn't say I never seem to have the time. It seems like I got to drive about an hour from my house, and then it seems like every time I go, we see 2 hogs or something. And then the next weekend they'll go and they're like, we got 8 hogs. It was awesome.
Wow.
So I wish I had the time to mess with it.
You said, sorry, I was taking a sip of my coffee here. So you wanted to touch a little bit more on the history.
Yeah, the history of black American Bulldogs. It's like every other month I hear all this silly stuff posted by newbies they think they know it all. And a lot of just misinformation. So I thought I'd go through the history that I know of black American Bulldogs and heavily colored American Bulldogs too. Mm-hmm. I used to be the same way when I started out, and I'd see these solid brindle or solid red American Bulldogs, or even the black ones. I always thought, that's a pit bull. That's just a big pit bull, which, a standard type dog, for the person that doesn't really understand the breeds, they may see it as a pit bull. I mean, their conformation and specs are probably not that far off from a big, tall, rangy pit bull, but they're not the same breed. I mean, they're related, but they're not the same breed. The black American Bulldogs, the oldest ones I know of are from Alan Scott. Alan Scott, I think he's around 70 years old now. And he had a dog. I think he was maybe 18 or 19. They said there's a picture of him with a dog. He's a black. Some people say he's black brindle, but he's black, almost all black, with a little white on his feet and a little white on his chest. His name was Dixie Blackjack. He was the grandson of Dick the Bruiser. And it was back then, that was when Alex Scott and John D. Johnson were gathering dogs up to try to preserve the breed that they named American. They actually originally named it the American Pit Bulldog. And then people confused it with a pit bull, so they dropped the name Pit later on. So it's just gone by American Bulldog. But originally, Alex Scott had said that his first bulldog came from this female that was all black, and I forget what he said her name was, but that John D. Johnson had the sister to that dog, and she was a gray brindle, all gray brindle, and that she was the mother of Sandman the Great. Sandman the Great is the son of Mac the Masher, and that's pretty much the foundation stud of Johnson's Yard. And a lot of standard dog people, they're performance type dogs. It's strange. Early on, Johnson had a dog. The other foundation dog was a dog called Dick the Bruiser. He was white with a fawn patch on his face, but he probably, if you study the pedigrees, he figures closer into some of the performance dogs and the early Scott dogs, Mr. Scott's first dogs, because Alex Scott had a dog called, what was his name? Oh, God, I can't remember his name now. Anyway, Dixie Man. Dixie Man was from Dick the Bruiser and a female that he got from somebody with no pedigree. Anyway, that was his favorite dog, and he got out of the breed briefly, I think in the early 80s or something, or in the late 80s possibly. He sold his whole yard to a guy called Joe Painter, and he claimed it was because Dixie Man had died, and he was just bummed out and just took a break for a while. So anyway, that original dog, Dixie Blackjack, was black, heavy colored. I don't think it was bred a whole lot. And there was a female, I think a granddaughter that Alan had called Sophia or Sophie, something like that. She was a white dog, so I couldn't really tell what color she was. And then the other granddaughter was a all red female that Steve Leclerc had called Pistol. Mm. And then she is supposedly behind all these early colored standard dogs. So the breed itself comes from heavy colored dogs, period. Mm-hmm. They didn't come from all these. Some people say, oh, no, they came from White English. I mean, some of the, you could say that Dick the Bruiser was a White English. But what is a White English? I mean, to this day, nobody can tell you what it is. And some of it's just for the same reason. Nobody can tell you a lot of things about a lot of different breeds. They've been around. They weren't paper dogs. They were just family bred. People in areas, regions had them and used them and bred them. But, there was a guy just recently in the last 4 years, he posts his dog incessantly. Beautiful, big, nice-looking dog. And he always told people a story that his family had these dogs and his family for 150 years, and it's a country bulldog and blah, blah, blah. And then come to find out years later, the dog was like half Presa Canario and quarter American Bulldog, and rest was White English or something. I don't know. But so anybody can say a dog is a White English or make up some other name and say it's this and that, which it's just a general term for dogs throughout the South. Different regions like them white, some wanted them all brindle. It was just region to region. It wasn't, it's how the breed started. Johnson and Scott, when they assembled dogs, they didn't have a gene pool of purebred dogs the way we think of purebred dogs today. they got dogs, and there's no telling what they were. Johnson said, well, we tested them, and if they tested to be game, catch dogs, then we used them. But I don't think Johnson did any of the testing. I think Alan Scott did all the testing. But Dick the Bruiser was a white dog with a fawn eye patch. And Matt the Masher was a all brindle dog with a white head and white feet in the front, I believe. And he was for sure a proven catch dog because he was owned by a guy called Sales Ashley that his only interest in the dogs was to work them and catch wild hogs. So that dog, Alan didn't even get the dog till he was old. But if you look at the dog, he was about 90%, somewhere around that, brindle, dark brindle. He wasn't white. And so what people don't understand, first of all, if you're talking about a black bulldog or a colored bulldog, a lot of people think a white dog is a color. A white dog is not a color. A white dog is a coat pattern called piebald. Piebald means, or the genetic term I think is white spotting. What it is it's a gene that causes there to be no pigment in the hair follicle. And when there's no pigment, and it also can happen on the skin and the eye, and if it happens on the eardrum too much, the dog will be deaf. So it's an absence of pigment. It's blocked out. You'll see dogs that are piebald that may have big patches. Some people say them. You've got them big cow patches. So big patches, and then you have what they call an extreme piebald, which is like what a Doggo Argentina is, a dog that's got really no color except maybe a freckle on his ear. And that's extreme piebald, which just means all the color is gone. The pigment is gone from the hair follicle and parts of the skin. So it's a coat pattern. It's not a color. White is not a color. White is the absence of color. And that's not just for American Bulldogs, for every breed of dog there is. So if you breed it's a very recessive trait too. So if you breed recessive traits together, two recessives produce more recessives. So if you got two recessive white extreme pied dogs, you're going to get more extreme pied dogs. If you keep doing it, you're going to get dogs that are going to be deaf because dogs require a certain amount of pigment on their eardrum or they're deaf. So the more you breed pied to pied, the less pigment and less color you're going to get. Johnson, whether he knew it or not, he even admitted that he hunted color. He looked for color because that's just what people liked. They weren't paying the big all-white dog or something. And to a point that's going on right now, I guess it's a lot of jealousy or just people that have really nice dogs and they're like pissed because they're showing their dog or hunting their dog or testing their dog or training it in sport work and it's a superior dog. And then you get puppy buyers. It's like, oh, I want a dog with the patch on his face, or I like a dog with lots of color. Or nowadays you got people like, I want a blue one or I want a black one, which I understand can infuriate a breeder. It infuriated me for years until I'm like, well, it's just the way it is. It's human nature. The color on a dog, whatever color it is, doesn't translate to intelligence, doesn't translate to working ability, doesn't translate to anything. It's just a gene that eliminates pigment. That's it. So Scott had the black dogs early on, and he didn't hide them. Evidently, Johnson hit them, and he wanted more of a pied that was 50-50, had big patches and had some color. Of course, he had a dog called Red Machine. He had his body was all red with some white feet and a white neck and head. And he had them like that. And then he had some that were almost all colored, except they had a sliver on their muzzle and star on their chest. But he selected for predominantly white dog. So that Dixie Blackjack really didn't transfer any of his black color because, he may have through Sophie Alan Scott's dog. I never looked into it that close. She was mainly all white. But Pistol threw the color because she was all red. But those dogs that came down from her were brindle or red. Sometimes they call them buckskin. But when I say red, I mean non-brindle red means fawn, brown, some people say burgundy, deep red color. They're all considered red, even if it's a light fawn color. It's just a non-brindle color. And that color in American Bulldogs and any breed is recessive. Recessive means that it doesn't matter if both its parents were brindle or black. It doesn't carry, it cannot contribute any color except red. So if you breed two of them together, all you're going to get is red. Matter of fact, I'm doing a breeding like that right now. Two dogs that are all fawnish red, and it's the most unmarketable color in American Bulldogs. It's because newbies, they're like, well, that looks like a boxer. Or I've had people say, oh, that's a Rhodesian Ridgeback. They look at the color and think that's, boxers are red. So all red dogs have boxer in them. Or pit bulls come in blue. So any blue dog is a pit bull or a Neapolitan Mastiff or whatever. But all these dogs can be certain colors, depending on the breed. Of course, some breeds they've totally eliminated or made it so rare for any specific color to come out. But so those are the first black dogs. Alan Scott to this day has black champions. I think he's got a national champion right now that's all black. And originally his black was his stuff up until I think just recently. He bred to a black dog from his good friend Don Matthews from Confederate Kennels. Don's got black dogs. His black mainly comes from the second strain of black dogs. There was a guy called Ray Weaver. Ray Weaver, I believe, had Performance American Bulldogs, but he also had bought a dog from Boudreaux, a black female pit bull off of a champion dog called Maverick. And her name was Zydeco Dancer. So she was a black Eli pit bull, game bred pit bull. So another guy that he was friends with, John Lickhart, he had bred the Leclerc Gainer type American Bulldogs, Performance American Bulldogs. He had a male he thought was really nice called Felony, and so they bred them together, and they approached the NKC at the time had a 7/8 rule, which you could outcross, but it wouldn't be registered until they reached 7/8 American Bulldog, registered American Bulldog. So they did it through that. They did the breeding, and they produced this dog called Jedi. Really nice looking dog. Who was black, mainly black with some white on him. And then they bred him back to a Felony daughter, I think, or something like that, and produced a female called Black Betty. And then eventually they did a breeding with him back to Black Betty and produced this female called, I keep wanting to say Norma Jean, but it's not Norma Jean, it's something else Jean. But anyway, she was a beautiful structured black dog. So Don Matthews, black, comes from that. He did talk in an interview about outcrossing to a black Amstaff, I believe it was. I don't really know anything about that. I'd never heard it till he said that. But I've never had a Confederate kennel dog, although I've seen really, really, really nice dogs out of that. So, but anyway, those two guys, Alan Scott and Don Matthews, are the oldest living American Bulldog dudes out there. I mean, Johnson's dead. Other than those two, I can't think of anybody that's been in the breed that long. They both used to hunt, and they both bred these dogs forever, and they were around in the beginning. And they both have black dogs. So if you're a newbie that's bred one litter, I think those two guys know a little bit more than you do about the breed. Not that black American Bulldogs early on were very popular. Not that heavy colored dogs were real popular. they were just the basis of the breed. A lot of people are like, well, American Bulldogs, they don't have any pit bull in them, or they have very little pit bull in them. It's like, well, first of all, you don't know that. Nobody knows for sure, but I can guarantee you that American Bulldogs either were bred from or derived from the same ancestors that made the pit bull in the United States. You have to remember, in the United States, they imported dogs, Staffordshire Terriers, whatever you want to call them, Bull Terrier crosses, fighting Bulldogs from England and Ireland. But it wasn't a breed here. I mean, they came up with the name. American Pit Bull Terrier is unique to Irish Staffs, and that they're probably related, same family, but they're a unique breed. And there's different things that happen here in the United States to make these different strains. But even those dogs, early on, a lot of them are white, especially, I believe, the ones that came from England were mainly white. If you think of Petey from the Little Rascals, if you know anything about Colby dogs, a lot of his early dogs were white or colored pieballs. And if you look at American Pit Bull Terriers today, game dogs, they never selected for color. They only select for gameness and for winning, people that won in the pit. And so color wasn't dictated by anything except whatever dog worked the best. And most of them now are probably heavy red colored dogs, just because red is recessive and there's a lot of inbreeding and line breeding done in early dogs. So if you get 2 red dogs, you're going to wipe out the color until you breed to another colored dog of that sort. So anyway, that was the first standard side. There was a guy named James Ellerby from Philadelphia. Originally, he was from, I believe, North Carolina or South Carolina. I can't remember. I spoke to him once on the phone. Awesome guy, really nice. He tells a story of when he was a kid, a little kid. In his little town, they had these big white bulldogs, he called them. And a lot of times they cropped the ears and docked the tail. He said the general store there in town, that guy bred them. Sometimes he'd have them in the store selling puppies. And he talked about a guy that lived across the street that owned a turkey farm, he called it. And the guy's name was Brock, and his bulldog's name was Brock. And he got in trouble with his dad because he grabbed Brock from his property and brought him to his house. He was a little tiny kid, and said, you got to bring that dog back. That's not our dog. So shortly after that, his dad died. And so his mom had to pack up the kids, and that's when they moved to Philadelphia, because that's where her family was from. So James Ellerby grew up and became an adult in Philadelphia, and he always loved those dogs. Matter of fact, he was early on, he had the Levitt Bulldogs, like first generation. He had them for a little while, and he bred a female, and he went to work, and he wasn't sure if she was going to start having pups or not. But anyway, she had difficulty, and when he didn't know it, she came home, she was dead. And he called Dave Levitt. And Dave Levitt flipped his lid and said, he took his dogs back and said, you should never breed dogs again, or blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I don't know the whole story with that. But so he had seen, as if anybody knows the story of Dave Levitt. Dave Levitt started with a English bulldog that was his pet, and he bought a female pit bull mastiff from some people up north that were using him for hog catching. And he took this female and bred it to this English bulldog of his, and that was his first strain And then the second one, he found this English bulldog that was really big called West Champs High Hopes. And so he went to Johnson's and went to Scott's, and he got a dog from Alan Scott called Pepper Pot. And he got 2 dogs from Johnson that he just used. One of them was a Dick the Bruiser daughter or granddaughter, I forget, that lived up close to him on the East Coast. Mr. Johnson sold it to these people, and they, for some reason, were returning the dog. I don't know if they said they were allergic to it or something. So he just sent it to Dave Levitt to use, and then he sent a female called King's Lady Grace up there. And so they bred those 3 dogs to that English Bulldog. And I think the King's Lady Grace, he said, didn't use any of the puppies because they were prolapsed. She prolapsed or something. Anyway, I don't know the whole story there, but James Ellerby. So James Ellerby got dogs from Johnson after he saw that the female, the original sugar duck, at Dave Levitt's. So he got American Bulldogs. And Johnson had told me that he'd asked him what he could do to make a black bulldog. I don't really know if it went down that way. I didn't get that information from James Ellerby when I talked to him. But I got from James Ellerby that in Philadelphia, he found some guy had a black dog, a black bulldog that I guess they were going to put down or something because supposedly she was in a fight, some back alley fight or something, and lost. Anyway, he took her and nursed her back to health. Her name was Champagne, and he was told that Champagne was half pit bull and half black lab. But other people that were around back then saw the dog, and they saw, and some of the dogs that came off of her, eventually, I think they expressed blue. And so they thought it might have been a Neapolitan Mastiff, because that was more of a dog fighters, I think, did that kind of a cross, a Neo Pit over a Labrador Pit Bull. So these black dogs Ellerby had, he told me he kept losing the color. He said they kept going back to white, which they will if you breed piebald to piebald of any kind, or if you have 2 colored dogs that come from piebald parents, and they'll start producing white. So that was the first strain, although I don't think a lot of black American Bulldogs were sold. Dave Arnetti was a guy that got one from, I think, the second generation, and I think his name was Muscles 2. He was a white dog with a black eye patch. He used his dog and used that dog back to a Johnson dog and produced quite a few. And so that blood's out there, but most of those dogs were white and seem to have lost, any color that you can see. And then a guy that's been in the breed probably as long as me, or maybe a little longer, Doug Kennedy up in Michigan. His first American Bulldog was down from Ellerby's dog. Her name was Black Mamba. And she looked a lot like the picture I saw of her grandma, Champagne. She kind of looked like a rangy black bulldog. So he pretty much based his early line off of that. And he did the same thing I did when I first got into colored. I got colored dogs, totally different from his. But when I first started getting real heavy colored dogs, I just sold them as pets. I didn't give papers. I just sold them as pets. So anyway, Kennedy always had those. He produced a blue dog, I think, called Chandra or something like that early on. And so he had dogs with color, but he usually kept piebald dogs. Even to this day, I think he says he wants even his colored dogs to have, a lot of flashy white markings. So that's the third strain. There's probably one other one, but I don't really know a whole lot about that. I don't think it's very popular anymore. There was a standard guy that had some black. I'm not sure where he got that from, but I don't think it's out there much. It's mainly the Lickhart Weaver. They called it synthetic line because they outcrossed to the game bred dog. And then he had the Ellerby Kennedy stuff is Kennedy kind of got it out there because James Ellerby died, and he never really produced a lot of dogs, I don't think. And so there's a strain of dogs that come off of Kennedy's stuff. Years later, a guy in California acquired a black American Bulldog that was mainly Kennedy blood, and he created his own line of heavy colored dogs down off of that stuff. Mm. And then you have the stuff that I kind of started with about 24 years ago. I was looking, I'd already done an outcross to a heavy colored line called Man of War. Man of War is a standard type strain that came from around Mississippi, Louisiana. There's a lot of rumors and nonsense. Nobody really knows the whole story. A lot of people say they're pit bull crosses, greyhound. I heard that once from them too, which I thought was funny. And because they have a lot of heavy color. One of my best friends in the breed, he's dead now, Jack Robinson, he lived in Mississippi. He got that Man of War strain. They weren't black. They were either all brindle or all red. And he got it because his son, he retired, his son-in-law bought him a pup. And that was that Man of War stuff. It was actually a white dog, I think, called Bully. But he liked it so much he decided he was going to get in the breed and breed them. So he bought a bunch more of these Man of War dogs and bred them. There was another guy down there in Mississippi, I believe, called Gerald Miles, and he had a lot of Man of War stuff. And he produced a really well-known standard dog that early on everybody liked. And his name was Vito Red. He was almost all red, dark, kind of a dark, deep-colored red. And everybody just looked at him and said, oh, he looks like a pit bull. But I have a good friend that really dealt with a lot of that blood. And he was 95 pounds. And he was supposed to be a heck of a dog, like incredible performance. He could do anything you want him to. And so that's the heavy colored stuff. There's several different heavy colored dogs, but they weren't black. But I had done an outcross through my friend Jack with the Man of War blood because I'd seen him take Painter Johnson male and breed it to his Man of War females and produce these big, beautiful, thick rear end, heavy muscle, really nice dogs. So he was my first outcross. My second outcross was around 2000. I guess maybe I saw it. I don't know if I saw it online or saw it in a dog. Maybe I saw it in a Dog World ad. There was a guy, I think he's in upstate New York, called Gail Raponi. He had American Bulldogs from another guy that lived up that way. The name of his kennel was Aspen Rare. And what they had was they'd done an outcross to this dog called Aslan. Aslan was kind of a thick, chunky, kind of a bully dog, but he didn't have a real short muzzle. Beautiful dog. Just the way he's colored up, I loved. He had a predominantly white head with patches on his face, and then he had a black blanket down his body. Mm. I saw him in a video that I bought of a dog show in Manassas, Virginia. They used to put these dog shows on like in 1994, 95, and he was there, and I saw a video, and I'm like, wow, that's a cool-looking dog. And so the guy at Aspen Rare, he did breedings with Aslan. Aslan was owned by a guy, Ryan, let's see, I can't remember his name now. Anyway, that guy's name of his kennel was True Form. And so they took this dog and bred him to basically a Bill Heinz bred female called Combat. And they bred Combat also to Vader Red. So they actually used some of the similar blood that I used as outcrosses, but they line bred on a lot heavier. So I saw this dog. His name was Badger. And he had his brother, littermate brother too. His name was Panda, I think. Yeah, Panda. And then there was another brother out of that called Puma. And they were really nice dogs. And they were black and white. But they were, standard blood, but they're real thick. Like this dog, Badger, was probably 110 pounds. And he was thick. Like his neck was huge. He had shoulder muscles. And they were doing bite work with him and doing all this stuff. And I thought, wow, he's awesome. He's cool. I'm going to breed to that dog. So I called those guys up. And they're in upstate New York, which is about 24-hour drive for me, I think, or 22-hour drive from where I'm at. And I was talking to them about shipping semen, and it just didn't sound like they had much interest or had any knowledge of how to do it. And I thought, gosh, can I drive that far? Oh, man. So the guy said, well, I have a daughter from Badger. I'll sell you. She was like a year old. Her name was Dinah, and she was kind of a little shorter, stockier, standard-looking bitch. She had a black blanket on her back and maybe, I forget, 1 or 2 eye patches. I think she had 2 black eye patches. So I thought, yeah, what the heck? So I bought her, got her, bred her the first time to kind of a hybrid male I had. Those puppies sucked. I found homes for them, but they just didn't click very well. So the second time I bred her to my stud, my real bully stud that seemed to produce real well. My dog would go ballistic. And I kept most of the pups until they were like 5 months old, and then just found homes for them. And there was one pup in there. He had like a tuxedo looking, he was black and white. He didn't look nothing like his dad. He didn't look nothing like his mom either. He looked like a miniature Great Dane. Like he was probably about 24, 25 inches, a little bit longer body, kind of had a mailbox muzzle, didn't look like a Great Dane, but you know what I mean? He's kind of rough looking old Great Dane. Anyway, he was such a incredible dog, like just really anything you want to do with him, he'd do it. He was a little hypo, just loved to do stuff, but he was great. He was great with other dogs. He was great with people. Anything you want to do, he'd do it. And I gotten a friend of mine had some of my dogs that lived in Kentucky. He was big into hog hunting. He got so much into hog hunting, I think his wife was going to divorce him. And he called me and said that they were going to have a little get-together. Some people were bringing hogs, and they were going to, back in the day, they did these, they weren't hog trials. They would just, you could test your dog out, see if he'd catch. Mm-hmm. So we went there, and I brought 3 dogs. My dog Shrek, which was inbred Broadzilla. He was a big, thick goofball. And then we brought his dad, who went back to my huge dog, this dog called Little Bear. He was like 130-pound, big basketball head, crazy-looking dog. Mainly Johnson blood. All that was mainly Johnson blood. And then I brought Taz, which was a black and white dog. And the other 2 dogs did good. Bear, first he tried to fuck the hog. He was an older dog. He didn't really understand what's going on. But as soon as it squealed and tried to run, he caught it. And Shrek caught not very wisely. He was a little too hyper nutty. But we pulled this dog out. He was 9 months old. This dog, Taz, a black and white dog. And I'm telling you, it looked like there was a super magnet attached to his mouth and that pig's ear. Or no, actually to his jowl. He caught him on his jowl the first time. And there was some hog hunters there. After they saw him catch, they're like, how much you want for him? You want to sell him? Not that they were offering me any big money. But like, no. And I was shocked because nothing told me that dog was going to be like that. Like he was just naturally geeked to do it. And because, like I said, he was a little, active dog, but I'd never seen any aggression from him whatsoever. But anyway, that was my start in black dogs. And I bred Taz, and if you saw the amount of color he had, it might be acceptable to most people because he had a white head with big black eye patches, and then he had a white on his neck and white on his feet. Mm-hmm. But when I bred him, even if I bred them to black dogs, I'd produce a couple, or even if I bred them to an all-white dog, I'd produce a couple dogs that had, like a black bodysuit, heavy colored. Mm-hmm. And I figured it was because I had that man of war blood in there that is heavy colored. And then he had a lot of color. So he would throw black sometimes, and he had even more color than him. And the main reason why I outcrossed to anything ever was to try to fix the breathing in my dogs. And right. Taz, he had great breathing. Of course, he had about a 3-inch muzzle. Like I said, his head was like a mailbox. He could do anything, and he could breathe and do all that stuff. So I thought, hey, man, I did it. Solved the problem, right? Mm-hmm. No, I'd breed him back to my bully, predominantly 6 7/8 Johnson dogs, and it was hit or miss. So I'd select a dog, and almost every time I bred him, the best dogs were always black. And I did not want a heavy black dog. I wanted, a white dog with big black patches would be cool. Mm-hmm. Or, when you breed black is dominant. It can be, you can have a pure black dominant dog, but that's another conversation. But they're dominant to red. So it'll carry the red color. So you can breed them and you can produce a heavy red colored dog. Mm. I had that go on too. I have that right now at my house. I have two. My dog Sumo's red and his daughter Honey's red. And like I said, that's not the kiss of death, but if you're looking at what people like and what people, want, it's not a heavy red dog in American Bulldogs. But anyway, I bred Taz and I produced a female from him, and I called her Bonsai. Bonsai was a little smaller, like 65-pound, kind of ratty-looking bitch. She wasn't a real pretty dog, but she had the best temperament, just smart, easy to deal with, athletic, breathes good. She was just a really easy, good dog. But she wasn't a looker. So I never really took a ton of pictures of her. I wasn't really proud of her looks. I remember one time I used to have tons of chickens, and some stupid chicken roosted on her fence, and I guess in the morning decided to jump into the yard with her. And I knew she had something in her doghouse because I couldn't get her to come out because she never would stay in the doghouse. Sure enough, it dumped it over, and there was a chicken in there. I thought it was dead. I just assumed it was dead. But chickens, when they get startled, sometimes they freeze. I don't know if their spinal cord can't handle it or something. They just look dead. And so here's this thing comes out on all this straw and shavings, and I go to grab it, and it jumps to life. So she had that chicken in there for who knows how long and didn't bite it hard enough to kill it. She was just, I guess she was looking at the squeaker or something, but she was my second generation, and I bred her to that dog I was talking about, Shrek. He was my inbred Broadzilla son. He was big, thick, Johnson-y, beautiful dog. And so I bred him to her, and she had a nice litter. It was every color of the rainbow except for brindle. It was red, some were black, some were all white. And once again, the best two pups in the litter, one was white with black patches, and the other one was a black bodysuit. Two sisters I kept. One I called Monella, and the other one was Darkzilla. And Darkzilla was a bigger dog, but I don't think she was as great of a producer. Monella was a good producer, I think. She was only bred to one dog. This dog BMJ that I produced. BMJ. Manila was a decent dog. Like I said, all the other dogs were nothing I'd be really proud of. And Manila was just, her structure was good, wasn't fantastic. She didn't have, a head type that was like, wow, anything. She was a good dog, but she was better than her mother, but not super spectacular, anything to write home about. But I had just gotten this dog back that I'd sold, and I got him back because they weren't winning in the show ring, and he was kind of young, and they thought he was a hybrid. But when he fully matured out, muscled up, he was not a hybrid. So anyway, I was so foaming at the mouth to breed this dog, BMJ, because I just loved his structure, and he was just incredible. Mm-hmm. So I bred him to the first dog that came in to eat, and that was Monella. And so she had 7 puppies. The first, there was 2 in there that were all white. They died within the first hour. And then she had 3 blacks and 2 reds. And I remember calling the guy who originally owned BMJ and telling him, I can't believe my luck. I mean, the freaking white dogs died, the heavy colored. And at that point, like I said, I produced heavy colored dogs, but I didn't take them to shows. I didn't brag about them. I kept the best pup out of every litter. And anything that was heavy colored that didn't keep, I gave or sold to pet people. Mm-hmm. And that litter was the same. I was going to just sell them with no papers, and I was going to keep this black dog that was called Huggy and this black female called Gracie. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the guy who originally had BMJ, he had a bunch of dogs he was going to show, and I don't know, through different things. They were from different people. They didn't pan out, and him and his wife were missing that dog, and I guess they'd seen how he matured out. And so we were friends, so I gave him back. But I had breeding rights to him, so it was no big deal. Mm. Well, that litter, he said, what are you going to do with this litter? It was the first litter off of the dog, and I guess he was pretty excited about it too. And I'm like, I'm going to keep 2. I'm going to sell the other ones as pets. And he said, why don't we place them out? He said, I'll give you what you're going to sell those 3 as pets. So we will co-own them, and we'll place them out and keep breeding rights on them. Okay, so that's what we did. And Huggy ended up going to a guy who we were all friends with. He bought a bunch of dogs from me, Tom Venn, and raised him up. You know, he was I liked the puppies, like structure-wise. There was nothing to really exaggerated about him as puppies. But when he matured, he was just a freak of nature. Just beautiful structure, crazy muscle, just a pretty extreme boy head. And his sister, Gracie, wasn't as typey as him, but boy, she got the muscle, and she was maybe even better structured than him. There was a third male that they placed with a guy that worked with a friend of a friend as a pet, and he lived right across the river in Illinois, close to East St. Louis. It was kind of a rough neighborhood. And he had lived in his grandmother's house. He had this dog from us called Butters. Butters was all red, big 105-pound dog, heavy colored. He used to chain Butters up in the front yard when he'd go to the bathroom. You know, he just put him on the chain. And some of the guys in the hood there would come by and want to roll the dog or want to fight the dog and ask, you know, is he tough and this and that. I think one time they threw a chow chow at the dog. Butters, I don't think, was very dog aggressive. He was kind of like a real handsome surfer guy, kind of an airhead. Mm-hmm. He was beautiful, but he was just kind of a goofball. But I used him, and I used Huggy, and I used Gracie, and those dogs, that litter, turned out incredible. Like, it really, it set a bar for structure and muscle, and they just look fantastic. Matter of fact, that guy I was telling you about that owned BMJ, he replaced Gracie with a friend or somebody he knew from the vet clinic, and she turned out so incredible. Her movement, her structure. She wasn't a perfect dog or anything. She didn't breathe worth a shit. She wasn't a good breather. Mm-hmm. But she was just incredible. Matter of fact, I took her in to get her hips done, and my vet was like, geez, we could use her to teach muscle anatomy. because you could see like all the sinewy muscle, and she just was built like a machine built her.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he started taking her to shows, and there was already black bulldogs, but they were all standard dogs, not really bully dogs. There was really no such thing until I did the outcross. Like Johnson people or 7/8 Johnson, you're not going to get a black dog in that. There wasn't any that I know of. So, a lot of people saw Hoggy and Gracie. They're bully-looking dogs, but they're almost 80%, 90% black. And there were a lot of people that were like, "Oh my God, that you just crossed a pit bull in. That dog looks like a pit bull." But they don't look like no pit bull. I mean, you can look at the pictures that are coming up. They're American Bulldogs. They're just black. So that became a thing. People saw Huggy, Gracie, and then Huggy was bred to a female I produced called Juanita, and it produced a dog called Gaucho that's black. Actually, Gaucho's black brindle, but you can't see the stripes in him. He's black looking. You can never see the stripes, but I know he's brindle because when you breed him, you produce brindle, even if he's bred to a red dog. So anyway, Gracie became the first black bully champion, and Gaucho became the first black bully champion male. And there was beautiful pictures taken from that guy. They posted videos, and they got the dogs out to shows. And so it really changed the game. Bully people wanted that black, because black, when you get a dog that's got that kind of muscle and it's black, it just shows every cut, every fiber. A white dog, it doesn't show it. You'd have to be, look at it in person to see it. But in photos, the black, just like a bodybuilder, they get really tan, they get dark. So it shows every fiber, every cut in their muscle.
Mm-hmm.
So Huggy and Gaucho, there are beautiful pictures of them out there. People saw them. Gaucho won, I think, every time he went in the ring, which says something, too, because there was a prejudice against this. He was a weird-looking dog. There wasn't a lot of bully dogs with that much color. So that kind of started the bully black craze. And it's, some people can say it's a negative thing, it's a positive thing, whatever. It is, anytime somebody breeds for color or breeds for any cosmetic stuff over what really matters, it's a detriment to the breed, definitely. Mm-hmm. But, bully dogs are, unfortunately, they've been bred the last 25 years for basic they're bred basically for the cosmetics. They're bred for a funky wide shoulder set. They're bred for a 1 inch or 2 inch muzzle, mm-hmm. big head. English Bulldog that really aren't originally part of the breed that Alan Scott and John D. Johnson set out to preserve. So when I hear bully people say, it ruins the breed when you breed for color, well, yeah, it could if you're selecting a shitty dog with color, the same as you produce a shitty dog with 1 inch or 2 inch muzzle, or just because it has a big head, just because it's big, just because it's thick. Some people think, these fat dogs are like, I don't understand how they can get on the high horse of producing good dogs if they're doing nothing any different. They just don't have the color that's hot. Mm-hmm. So black dogs, that was about, I think Huggy was born in 2007, maybe something like that. Mm-hmm. And that kind of started the popularity. The standard size, there's people that talk against it too. They didn't like you crossed a pit bull in. But I just don't under people's thinking, if they really understand the American Bulldog, there's all kinds of things that were put in purposely or not, unwittingly, not knowing it. A lot of those foundation dogs that they found, they didn't have pedigrees. They didn't have any history that was, documented purebred breedings. They were dogs that they thought, yep, this dog can do the job, so it fits that.
Right.
Which is the way they should be breeding dogs. Nowadays, you got all these show dog type people. People think a breed is pure because it's a certain color, or because its ear sets a certain way, or because its tail is a certain way. But that's okay if you're breeding Pekingese or Pomeranians or Chihuahuas or some kind of novelty breed. If that's the whole gist of the breed, is that they're little, they're cute, they're fluffy, but this is a working breed. Whether you ever work the dog or not, what created this breed is work. Catch work, farm work, whatever they needed done. They were a dog that had a job, and that's how it evolved. So, and if you're not honoring the function, the true to type function of the dog, you don't, it's like saying, oh, I got this beautiful Labrador, but he drowns if he goes to swim. I've got this beautiful pointer, but he can't flush game. He won't point at anything. He just looks like what one's supposed to look like. Well, if it looks and can't do it, there's people for thousands and thousands of years that bred dogs before we had all the different breeds and before we had paperwork, before we had all that. Bulldogs, catch dogs, tracking dogs, they were bred for work. And even in the old time Bulldog, bull baiting history, it talks about they tested stuff. If it didn't test as a catch dog, it was not considered a Bulldog. Just like game bred pit bulls were bred, you can have 6 dogs in a litter, and until they're tested game or proven game, they don't consider them anything but curs. Right. They won't even call it the breed name. So that's the way all these working breeds were done. And if you produced a Bulldog that would catch a bull or hold a wild boar, and he was fantastic at his job, and he had a fluffy tail, nobody cared. If you walked up to those medieval hunters and said, "Oh my gosh, you stupid! What do you got that stupid dog for? He's not a Bulldog. He's got a fluffy tail, or he's black, or he's brindle, or he doesn't have enough white on his butt." They think you're nuts. Like, what? Right. It's just a totally different world. And if you look, you don't have to read a study. If you look at every working breed of dog that became popular and was bred purely on looks, and they're destroyed. I have my sister's best friend just had to put her Doberman down. And I'm like, oh, how old was it? She said 7. I'm like, 7? She goes, yeah, they spent $22,000 on medical bills on that dog. And finally, at 7 years old, they had to put him down. Wow. And one of my friends, she's actually a vet. She just had to put her dog down, a Doberman, 7 years old. It had all kinds of stuff, kidney problems, all the stuff. Wow. Dobermans have that cardiomyopathy where they just fall over dead, sometimes at 5, 6, 7 years old. Same with Great Danes, same with boxers. The boxers also have really high crazy incidence of cancer. All these weird diseases that you can barely breed away from once it's locked in. Strange, weird disorders, skin issues, mental issues, all the strange stuff. It's because people think, oh, it's because of inbreeding. No, it's not because of inbreeding. Inbreeding to a point, I guess you could keep inbreeding until they wouldn't live. But inbreeding or line breeding doesn't cause anything. It just brings it to the surface, something that's already there. But it doesn't lock it in. What locks it in is selecting on stupid shit. Like, my dog has a beautiful eyeliner. Or my dog is, all white. My dog is this, my dog is that. My dog has perfect ears. Yeah, but he's, you drop a can on the ground and he'll run up behind a couch. He's an idiot. They justify all kinds of things because they think, I know what a good dog is. It looks good. It looks like this, looks like that. When really looks should be, especially on a working breed of any kind, it should be like way down on the list. I know nobody does that. We're just weird visual people. We, have different things that we breed for, but everybody has a prejudice towards better looking dogs.